In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The eternal city of Rome was breached. For the first time in exactly 800 years, foreign invaders marched through the streets of the greatest empire on earth. They burned the monuments, they looted the vaults, they shattered the illusion of Western invincibility. Your history textbook tells you exactly why this happened. It blames the barbarians. It blames weak emperors, political corruption, and internal decay. It tells you that the Germanic tribes, the Goths and the Vandals, grew bold, smelled weakness, and coordinated a massive invasion to conquer Rome. It is a clean, simple, deeply European story. It is also completely wrong. Those barbarian hordes weren't invading Rome to conquer it. They were running for their lives. And what they were running from was a geopolitical shockwave triggered centuries earlier, 5,000 miles away. This is the buried record, and today, we are digging into the Steppe domino. What follows is the story they didn't want you to know. Let's set the scene. If you ask a traditional Western historian why the Roman Empire fell, they will point you toward the borders, specifically the Rhine and the Danube rivers. For centuries, these rivers formed a massive psychological and physical wall across the European continent. On one side, you had the light of Roman civilization. You had aqueducts, senate houses, marble temples, and paved roads. On the other side, you had the dark, impenetrable forests of Germania. You had tribes of people the Romans literally classified as savages. For hundreds of years, the heavily armed Roman legions held that line. They repelled small raids, they dictated trade, they maintained absolute order. Rome believed it was the center of the universe, and the borders were designed to keep the rest of the world out. But in the late 4th century, the dam broke. The textbook version claims that these Germanic tribes suddenly realized Rome was weak. It claims they looked across the river, saw the unmatched wealth of the empire, and launched a massive, aggressive invasion to take it for themselves. The Visigoths crossed the Danube, the Vandals crossed the Rhine. They smashed through the frontier defenses, defeated the mighty Roman legions in open combat, and carved up the Western Roman Empire until absolutely nothing was left. It sounds like a brilliant military conquest. It sounds like the classic story of a hungry, aggressive outsider taking down a fat, complacent empire. But that is just the surface. When you actually read the primary sources from the front lines, the narrative of a glorious barbarian invasion completely falls apart. Look closely at the year 376 AD. This is the precise moment the Roman border collapsed. A massive confederation of Gothic tribes arrived at the banks of the Danube River. There were tens of thousands of them. Warriors, women, children, and elders. They didn't arrive with siege engines. They didn't arrive in battle formation. They arrived starving, desperate, and terrified. They stood on the muddy riverbank and they begged the Roman commanders to let them cross. They pleaded for asylum. They offered to surrender their weapons. They offered to serve on the front lines of the Roman army. They offered to become peasant farmers on barren Roman land. They just wanted to be allowed inside the empire. Does that sound like a conquering army? No. It sounds like a desperate population trying to escape an apocalypse. The Roman commanders, recognizing an opportunity to exploit cheap labor, eventually let them cross. The conditions were horrific. The Goths were packed into refugee camps. They were deliberately starved by corrupt Roman officials. The historical record shows that the refugees became so desperate for food that they traded their own children into Roman slavery just for portions of dog meat. You do not sell your children for dog meat if you are a victorious conqueror invading a foreign land. You do it when you have absolutely no other choice. The Roman border wasn't shattered by a calculated military invasion. It was crushed by a catastrophic, violent refugee crisis. The Germanic tribes weren't marching west to claim the glory of Rome. They were pushed. They were fleeing in absolute, blinding terror. And that raises a question that Western historians ignored for centuries. If the heavily armed, battle-hardened tribes that eventually destroyed Rome were running for their lives, what exactly were they running from? To find the answer, you have to look beyond the forests of Europe. You have to look east, out onto the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Eurasian steppe. This is an ocean of grass that stretches from the borders of modern-day Hungary all the way to Manchuria. It is a harsh, brutal environment that breeds absolute resilience. And out of this endless horizon came a force that Europe literally had no vocabulary to describe. The Romans called them the Huns. They didn't fight like the Germanic tribes. They didn't fight like anyone the Romans had ever seen. They were born in the saddle. They used a composite recurve bow that could punch an arrow through armor at incredible distances. They could shoot with lethal precision while riding at a full, terrifying gallop. They struck without warning. They burned entire settlements to the ground. And they vanished back into the steppe before a defense could even be mounted. A Roman historian named Ammianus Marcellinus wrote about their arrival. He was horrified. He wrote that the Huns were so fierce, so incredibly destructive, that they seemed like demons spawned directly from the earth. They didn't just conquer territories, they erased them. They swept through Eastern Europe like a natural disaster. They slaughtered the Alans. They crushed the Gruthungi. They systematically annihilated every single tribe that dared to stand in their path. But the Huns didn't just defeat their enemies, they displaced them. Imagine a massive, continent-wide game of dominoes. The Huns crashed into the easternmost tribes. Those survivors fled west in a sheer panic, crashing into their neighbors. Those neighbors were forced out of their own lands, pushing further west, crashing into the next tribe. This wave of absolute desperation amplified as it moved across the European continent. By the time it reached the Danube River, it had gathered the force of a geopolitical tsunami. The Goths standing on the riverbank in 376 AD, begging Rome for sanctuary, were just the final domino in that chain. They weren't looking for Roman gold, they were looking for a shield. They wanted the Roman legions to protect them from the monsters riding out of the east. The Roman Empire didn't die because its culture rotted from the inside out. It died because it accidentally absorbed the collateral damage of a war it didn't even know was happening. But the buried record goes deeper, much deeper. Western textbooks treat the Huns like a sudden act of God, a mysterious plague of horsemen that spawned in the middle of the steppe just to torment Europe. They act as if the Huns simply popped into existence out of nowhere. But history doesn't work like that. Empires do not materialize from thin air. The Huns were running from something too. Or rather, they were the descendants of a shattered empire that had been violently evicted from its ancient homeland. To understand why Rome fell, to understand why the Huns arrived in Europe with such unmatched ferocity in the first place, we have to leave the Mediterranean entirely. We have to travel 5,000 miles east. We have to look at the records of a civilization that was larger, wealthier, and far more advanced than Rome could ever hope to be. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, a military campaign was taking place that changes everything you know about Western antiquity. 300 years before the Goths begged at the Roman border, China was fighting a war for its very survival, and their enemy was a nightmare. They were called the Xiongnu. The Xiongnu were not a single tribe. They were a massive, highly organized confederation of nomadic warriors. They controlled a steppe empire that stretched across modern-day Mongolia, Siberia, and Central Asia. They were the undisputed masters of horseback archery. They were fast, they were brutal, and they looked at the wealthy, settled civilization of China as their personal bank. For generations, the Xiongnu raided the Chinese frontier. They burned cities, they slaughtered garrisons, they took thousands of slaves. They were such a terrifying existential threat that the Chinese spent centuries building the most massive defensive structure in human history just to keep them out, the Great Wall of China. But a wall isn't a victory, it is a desperate measure. Early Chinese emperors knew they couldn't defeat the Xiongnu in open combat on the open steppe. The nomads were too fast. So, the Chinese tried to buy them off. They established a system called he qin. It translates to harmonious kinship. But that was just diplomatic spin. It was extortion. The Han Dynasty paid the Xiongnu massive annual tributes. They sent thousands of bolts of silk. They sent gold. They sent grain. They even sent their own royal princesses to be married off to the Xiongnu warlords. The most powerful civilization in Asia was essentially paying protection money to a nomadic mafia. But that is just the surface. The buried record shows how an empire decides it has finally had enough. In the 2nd century BC, an emperor came to power in China who refused to pay. His name was Emperor Wu of Han. Emperor Wu realized that appeasement was bleeding his country dry. He decided to do the impossible. He decided to take the war to the steppe. He wanted to exterminate the Xiongnu threat completely. But to defeat a horse-born empire, you need horses. And China didn't have the right ones. So, Emperor Wu launched military expeditions thousands of miles into Central Asia, just to secure a supply of larger, faster horses. The famous heavenly horses of the Fergana Valley. He built state-run studs. He raised massive cavalry armies that could finally match the nomads in speed and endurance. Then, he unleashed them. What followed was one of the longest, most brutal, and most consequential conflicts in human history, the Han-Xiongnu War. It lasted for over a century. The Han armies didn't just defend the border, they pushed north. They pushed deep into the unforgiving Gobi Desert. They launched massive, coordinated strikes with hundreds of thousands of cavalrymen. They burned the Xiongnu pastures. They captured their livestock. They systematically destroyed the economic foundation of the nomadic empire. The Xiongnu were completely outmatched. The Chinese military machine was too organized, too relentless, and too well funded. The pressure fractured the Xiongnu confederation. They split in half. The southern Xiongnu realized they could not win. They surrendered. They submitted to the Han Dynasty and were allowed to settle inside the Chinese borders as a subservient buffer state. But the northern Xiongnu refused to bow. And this is where the story most people know stops being true. Because what happened next didn't just reshape Asia, it reshaped Europe. In 89 AD, the Han Dynasty launched the final, devastating blow. A Chinese general named Dou Xian led a massive coalition force deep into the Altai Mountains. He cornered the northern Xiongnu. The battle was absolute carnage. The Chinese records state that the Han army utterly annihilated the Xiongnu forces. They captured their kings. They shattered their military command. Dou Xian carved a monument into a cliff face, deep in Mongolia, to commemorate the total destruction of China's greatest enemy. The inscription is still there today. It is a literal tombstone for a nomadic empire. The surviving northern Xiongnu had a choice: submit to China and face total cultural erasure, or run. They chose to run. They packed up their tents, they gathered their surviving herds, and they fled west into the vast, uncharted emptiness of the Eurasian steppe. The Han Dynasty had won. They secured their northern border. They established the Pax Sinica. They opened the Silk Road, connecting the east and the west in a web of global trade. They celebrated the greatest military triumph in their history. But military triumphs have a blast radius. When you violently evict a massive population of hardened, displaced warriors from their homeland, they do not simply vanish. They become a rolling catastrophe. The Xiongnu began a slow, grinding migration across the continent. This wasn't a journey of months or years. It was a journey of centuries. As they moved west, they evolved. They absorbed other nomadic tribes. They adapted to new environments. Their language shifted. Their culture morphed. The trauma of their eviction forged them into something darker, harder, and infinitely more aggressive. They were a displaced people, searching for a new homeland, and to get it, they had to take it from someone else. They pushed into Central Asia. They pushed into the plains of Kazakhstan. They pushed toward the Ural Mountains. And as they moved, the terrifying reputation of the Xiongnu transformed into something Europe could barely pronounce. The Xiongnu became the Huns, and every time the Huns moved west, they created a shockwave. Imagine the sheer kinetic energy of this migration. Hundreds of thousands of mounted warriors, driven by the desperation of exiles, crashing into the settled tribes of the Asian steppe. Those tribes were crushed. Their survivors panicked. They packed up their own families and fled west, running blindly from the terror at their backs. This was the invisible tectonic shift. While the Romans were building bathhouses in Gaul, while they were watching gladiator games in the Colosseum, while they were writing poetry about the eternal glory of their empire, a slow, violent chain reaction was rippling across the globe, heading straight for them, and they had absolutely no idea it was coming. Fast forward 300 years from the Chinese victory at the Altai Mountains, the shockwave finally hits the edge of Europe. The year is 370 AD. The Huns arrive at the banks of the Black Sea. They annihilate the Alans. They shatter the Gruthungi. And then, they turn their sights on the Turvingi, the massive Gothic confederation, living just outside the Roman border. The Goths realize they cannot fight this enemy. They cannot outrun them on the open plains. Their only hope of survival is to hide behind the biggest wall on earth. So, they run to the Danube River. They beg the Roman commanders for asylum, and the dominoes finally stop falling. The Roman Empire took them in, but they couldn't feed them. They abused them. Corrupt Roman officials pushed a desperate, heavily armed refugee population to the absolute breaking point. 2 years later, the Goths rebelled. At the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, these cornered refugees slaughtered the Roman Emperor Valens. They annihilated 2/3 of the Eastern Roman field army. It was a military disaster from which the Roman military machine never truly recovered. A few decades later, in 410 AD, the descendants of those exact same Gothic refugees marched into the city of Rome and sacked it. The Western Roman Empire didn't collapse because of lead pipes. It didn't fall because of moral decay, or soft emperors, or a sudden barbarian desire for conquest. It was shattered by a geopolitical chain reaction. Western history frames the fall of Rome as the ultimate tragedy of the ancient world. It is taught entirely as a European story, a story of civilized men falling to local, uncivilized barbarians. But peel back the final layer. The defining moment of Western antiquity was actually the collateral damage of an Eastern military triumph. When the Han Dynasty General Dou Xian carved his victory monument into that Mongolian cliff in 89 AD, he thought he was just securing the Chinese border. He had absolutely no idea that he had just pulled the trigger on a bullet that would travel for 300 years, across 5,000 miles, and strike the heart of the Roman Empire. China didn't just defeat the Xiongnu, they accidentally assassinated Rome. We are taught history in isolated boxes. We study the Roman Empire in one classroom. We study the Han Dynasty in another. We pretend that the East and the West existed on different planets, perfectly separated by geography. But the buried record proves that the world has always been deeply, violently interconnected. The borders we draw on maps are illusions. A single, decisive victory on the steppes of Asia can rewrite the fate of a continent on the other side of the globe. The next time you hear someone talk about the fall of Rome, tell them the textbook is incomplete. Tell them the real story didn't start in Italy, it started in Beijing. Everything you just heard is documented. It's in the historical record. The Han Xiongnu War, the migration of the steppe tribes, and the Gothic refugee crisis are established facts. The question isn't whether the evidence exists. The question is, why weren't you taught this? If this changed how you see the ancient world, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And if you want to go deeper, the buried record has a lot more to reveal. Subscribe, and we'll keep digging.